Today we are bringing a real-life story of Jeff Bezos. Jeffrey Preston Bezos was born on January 12, 1964, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His mother, Jacqueline, was a teenager then, and his father, Ted Jorgensen, was very young too. A few years later, Jacqueline married Miguel Mike Bezos, a Cuban immigrant who adopted Jeff and gave him the last name the world now knows, Bezos. When Mike finished school in New Mexico, the family moved to Houston, Texas, where he worked as an engineer. Jeff went to River Oaks Elementary there. He spent summers with his grandfather, Lawrence Preston Geese, at a ranch near Cotula, Texas. Those summers mattered. On the ranch, you fix things yourself. You learn to be patient. You learn that small daily work makes big results. Later, the family moved again, to Miami, Florida, where Jeff attended Miami Palmetto Senior High. In high school, Jeff wasn't just good, he was the top student, valedictorian, of the class of 1982. Teachers and local papers remember him talking about space even then, dreaming of things most teenagers never think about. He spoke openly about building space hotels one day. Big ideas can sound strange at first, but he kept repeating them. Two things show up again and again in Jeff's early years. First, he loved to tinker. As a kid, he set up simple alarms to keep his younger siblings out of his room and liked taking things apart to see how they worked. Second, he read and studied hard. This mix, hands, heart, and head, made him both practical and ambitious. Houston exposed him to science and engineering culture. Miami gave him stage time to voice big dreams. After high school, Jeff went to Princeton University. He studied electrical engineering and computer science, the hard stuff, and finished in 1986 with top honors, summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa. That tells us something important. Behind the calm look and easy laugh, there was a person who could handle tough courses, late lights, and big workloads. The habits he built at Princeton, thinking from first principles, writing clearly, and solving problems step by step, would later shape Amazon's way of working. Looking back, the picture is simple. A boy who was curious, a teen who dreamed big, and a young man who trained his mind to be precise. Family gave him stability, school gave him tools, and early mentors gave him confidence. None of this was loud or showy. It was steady. It was practice for the giant leap that would come next. After Mike Bezos adopted young Jeff and gave him his last name, the family moved to Houston, Texas, where Mike worked as an engineer for Exxon. In Houston, Jeff attended River Oaks Elementary School from around 4th to 6th grade. During summers, he went to his grandfather's ranch near Cotula, Texas. On the ranch, he did physical work, laying pipe, vaccinating cattle, fixing windmills, and other chores. These tasks taught him patience, persistence, and how to fix things with his hands. Later, the family moved again, to Miami, Florida. Jeff finished his school years there and enrolled at Miami Palmetto Senior High School. Even as a kid, Jeff loved to tinker. One story, he rigged up an electric alarm to keep his younger siblings from entering his room. He also tried inventions. He made a solar cooker with tinfoil and umbrella parts, and small alarms in baking pans to detect intruders. Some worked, some didn't, but each was a lesson in failure and design. In school, he was very strong in math and science. He won recognition like the Silver Knight Award in 1982. When he graduated high school in 1982, Jeff was the valedictorian, the top student in his class. In his graduation speech, he spoke about dreams of human life in space, colonizing other planets. Even then, his imagination crossed the borders of Earth.
Also, during high school, he worked part-time, even at McDonald's, to earn money and learn responsibility. He took part in a student science training program at the University of Florida. This gave him extra exposure beyond his high school classes. These school years and experiments taught Jeff several valuable lessons. Curiosity is powerful. He never stopped asking why or how to make it better. Failing is part of learning. Some inventions failed, but he treated failure as feedback, not disaster. Hard work matters. Doing chores, working part-time, studying late, he built discipline. Dreaming big is okay. Even when talking of space colonization, people might call you unrealistic, but he held those dreams. In 1982, after finishing high school with honors, Jeff started at Princeton University in New Jersey. He initially enrolled in physics. He wanted to understand the deep laws of nature, perhaps follow in the steps of Einstein or Hawking. But soon, he faced a challenge. The field of theoretical physics had some students whose talent made things look effortless. In one class, Jeff observed that some classmates solved problems much more quickly and elegantly. He realized he was good, but perhaps not exceptional in that narrow direction. That insight humbled him, but also clarified what he should focus on. So he shifted. He changed his major to electrical engineering and computer science, areas where he could combine logic, creation, and practicality.
At Princeton, Jeff's excellence showed up in many ways. He was a National Merit Scholar, which means he had top scores in national exams. He maintained very high grades, was elected to Phi Beta Kappa, a prestigious academic honor society, and Tau Beta Pi for engineering. He joined and even led student groups. One was SEDS, the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. He had loved space since childhood. He was part of one of Princeton's social or eating clubs, Quadrangle Club. During this time, he also got job offers from top tech and research places, Intel, Bell Labs, Anderson Consulting, but he held back because he saw that startups and cutting-edge work excited him more. One of the most important lessons from Jeff's Princeton days is this: he confronted his own limitations and adjusted, not by giving up, but by pivoting to a domain better suited to him. He realized if he raced in theoretical physics against people wired for it, he might always lose. But in computer science, engineering, startups, he could compete, learn, and lead. This self-awareness didn't make him weak. On the contrary, it made him wiser. He saw possibilities, held on to big dreams, but chose a path where he could win by working smart and consistent. By 1986, he graduated summa cum laude, top honors with a Bachelor of Science in Engineering in Electrical Engineering, Computer Science. After graduating from Princeton in 1986, Jeff had many options. Tech giants like Intel and Bell Labs wanted him. But Jeff chose to move to Wall Street, where computers were becoming central to finance. He believed that by understanding both technology and money, he could prepare for bigger ideas later. His first job was at Phitel, a startup that aimed to build an international network for electronic trading between banks. Bezos worked on building systems that connected financial institutions to communicate faster, something new and risky at the time. Soon he was promoted to head of development and then director of customer service. It was his first taste of leadership and pressure. After Phitel, Bezos moved to Bankers Trust, where he worked from 1988 to 1990. There he developed computer systems for managing investment portfolios. This role deepened his understanding of how markets behave and how to manage both people and numbers. In 1990, he joined D.E. Shaw & Co., a new highly analytical hedge fund that used computer algorithms to trade. The founder, David E. Shaw, was known for hiring brilliant young engineers and mathematicians. Bezos quickly became one of Shaw's top employees and rose to the position of senior vice president by age 30, an incredible achievement for someone so young. At D.E. Shaw, Bezos learned to use data, logic, and long-term thinking to make big decisions. He was also introduced to the world of quantitative modeling, predicting future trends using technology. This combination of logic and innovation would later define how Amazon was built. While at D.E. Shaw, Bezos worked closely with Shaw himself. One day, in 1994,
Jeff noticed a report showing that internet usage was growing by 2,300% per year. That number stunned him. He immediately realized that this was not just a trend, it was a revolution. He began to imagine how the internet could be used to sell things. But what? Books, music, electronics. The idea grew quickly in his mind. He had a comfortable, high-paying job, but he couldn't stop thinking about that 2,300% growth.
Soon, Jeff had to make a choice: stay in a safe, successful career on Wall Street, or take a huge risk to chase a dream that might fail. He made a list of pros and cons, but eventually he used what he called his regret minimization framework. He asked himself, "When I'm 80, will I regret not trying this?" The answer was clear. He would regret not trying. And so he decided to quit. That single decision would change not only his life, but the way the entire world shops. At D.E. Shaw, Jeff was earning a big salary, leading projects, and working with some of the smartest minds in finance. But one day, while browsing the web, he came across a startling statistic. Internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year.
That number changed everything. He saw the early internet not as a toy or a passing fad, but as a new world being built in real time. He started thinking, if millions of people will soon be online, what can I create for them? He made a list of possible online businesses: music, videos, computer software, apparel, and books. Books caught his attention. There were millions of titles in print, and no physical bookstore could ever stock them all. Selling books online would let him offer more choices than any bookstore on earth. Jeff went to his boss, David E. Shaw, and pitched the idea. Shaw liked the concept, but told Jeff he should think carefully before leaving such a promising career. Jeff spent a few days thinking and created what he later called his regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at age 80 and asked, "Would I regret not trying this when I had the chance?" The answer was clear: yes. So he chose the harder, riskier path.
Jeff quit D.E. Shaw in 1994. With his wife, Mackenzie Scott, he packed their car, a Chevy Blazer, and drove from New York City to Seattle. During that cross-country trip, Jeff sat in the passenger seat, typing out his business plan on a laptop. He wanted to be near the tech talent of Microsoft's home city and close to major book distributors. He named his company Cadabra at first, short for abracadabra, but his lawyer told him it sounded like cadaver over the phone. Not ideal for a business, so Jeff brainstormed new names. He liked the idea of something big, global, and flowing. After flipping through a dictionary, he landed on Amazon, after the largest river in the world. It symbolized endless possibilities and vastness.
Bezos started Amazon in his garage in Bellevue, Washington. He hired a few employees, including Shel Kappan, the first engineer, and Paul Davis. They set up makeshift desks made from wooden doors and metal brackets. Simple, cheap, and creative. Later, door desks became a symbol of Amazon's frugality. The first version of the website, launched in July 1995, was simple. It had a clean list of books and a shopping cart icon. Still, it worked. People could order books from anywhere. Within weeks, Amazon was selling books in all 50 states and 45 countries. Every day, the team packed books in boxes, drove them to the post office, and emailed customers to thank them personally. Bezos's rule was clear: start with the customer and work backward.
But not everyone believed. Some said online shopping was a fad, or that no one would ever type their credit card number into a website. Jeff ignored the noise. He had a bigger vision: books were just the beginning. His plan was to build the everything store, a place where people could buy anything online. The internet boom had just begun, and Bezos was one of the first to see where it could lead. In 1994, Jeff Bezos was 30 years old and one of the youngest senior vice presidents at D.E. Shaw & Co. He was earning a great salary, living in New York, and had a promising career in finance. Most people would have stayed put, but Jeff couldn't stop thinking about that one number: internet growth of 2,300% per year. He knew he was standing at a rare moment in history, a digital frontier. He often said, "If I didn't try this, I would always regret it."
When he told his boss, David Shaw, that he wanted to sell books online, Shaw said it sounded like a good idea for someone who didn't already have a great job. That advice made sense, but Jeff didn't want a great job. He wanted to build something new. So one morning, he made the decision. He told Mackenzie, his wife, about his plan. She supported him completely, even though it meant giving up stability for uncertainty. Together, they decided to move to Seattle, where Jeff could find tech talent and be close to book distributors. When they arrived in Seattle, Jeff rented a small house with a garage in Bellevue, Washington. That garage became Amazon's first office. It had no fancy setup, just a few desks made out of wooden doors, some old computers, and phone lines that barely worked. He hired a few people: Shel Kapfin, his first employee and a software engineer, Paul Davis, and a few others. They worked long hours building the website, coding the database, and contacting book distributors manually. Jeff also wrote the original Amazon business plan during this time, a detailed document that showed how the company would grow by focusing on three things: low prices, wide selection, and customer satisfaction. That became Amazon's formula for success. In July 1995, Amazon.com went live. Jeff's parents, who had invested their life savings, $245,573 into his dream, were among the first to cheer him on.
At first, sales trickled in. Then, suddenly, they exploded. Within 30 days, Amazon was selling books in all 50 U.S. states and over 45 countries. Every order was a victory. Jeff and his small team packed the books themselves, drove them to the post office, and sent personal thank you emails to customers. The company's early motto was simple but powerful: get big fast. And Jeff meant it. He reinvested nearly every dollar of profit back into the company, focusing on growth over short-term gains. Of course, things weren't easy. The servers crashed often. Sometimes the system double-charged customers. Boxes piled up in the garage. The team worked late nights to fix bugs and fulfill orders manually. Still, Bezos was known for his energy and optimism. Whenever something broke, he'd laugh and say, "Isn't this fun?" That attitude spread through the team, turning stress into adventure.
By the end of 1996, Amazon had grown from a garage startup into a company with more than 150 employees and $15.7 million in sales. Investors started to take notice. The idea that began as a road trip dream was becoming one of the first great internet success stories. Jeff's leap, leaving Wall Street for a garage, had paid off. But the journey was just beginning. The year was 1995. Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos were living in a small rented house in Bellevue, Washington. The garage had concrete floors, low ceilings, and barely enough space for a few desks made out of old wooden doors, cheap but sturdy. Those door desks became one of Amazon's famous symbols of frugality and creativity. The garage wasn't fancy. It was freezing in winter and boiling in summer.
Jeff sometimes joked that the only decoration they could afford was a poster that said, "Work hard, have fun, make history." The tiny team with a huge dream. At this point, Amazon had just a few employees. Jeff Bezos, the founder and CEO, doing everything from coding to packing boxes. Shel Kapfin, the first engineer and one of the most important early hires. Paul Davis and Nick Hanauer, who helped with early funding and business growth. A few part-time helpers who handled book packaging and deliveries. Their daily schedule was simple but intense. Work, eat, code, ship, repeat. They played rock music while packaging books and celebrated every sale with excitement. Jeff's laugh, a loud, unmistakable ha ha ha, often echoed through the garage whenever something went wrong or right. That laugh became legendary at Amazon.
On July 16, 1995, the first order came through. A book titled Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies, Computer Models of the Fundamental Mechanisms of Thought by Douglas Hofstadter. It was a small sale, but it marked the start of a revolution. Every time an order came in, a bell rang in the office. Soon, the bell rang so often that they had to turn it off. Within the first month, Amazon had sold books to people in all 50 U.S. states and 45 countries. The orders came faster than they could ship them. The small team often stayed until 2 a.m. packing boxes. Back in the mid-1990s, most people were still scared to use credit cards online. Bezos knew that for Amazon to succeed, customers had to trust it. So he made 3 big promises that shaped Amazon's early culture. Customer obsession, always focus on what's best for the customer, long-term thinking, sacrifice short-term profits for future growth, and relentless innovation. Keep improving, even when things seem fine. Jeff personally read customer emails, replied to complaints, and even called unhappy buyers to apologize. He wanted Amazon to feel human.
By 1996, sales had jumped to over $15 million. Investors began to notice. Reporters visited the garage to see this strange new online bookstore. Many couldn't believe it would last. When asked if he thought traditional bookstores were in danger, Jeff smiled and said, "We're not against bookstores. We're just using a different kind of shelf, one that never ends." The garage years were full of mistakes, laughter, exhaustion, and belief. Jeff and his small team weren't just building a company. They were building a new way to shop, one click at a time. Those long nights in cardboard boxes became the foundation of one of the world's biggest businesses. But for now, it was still a group of dreamers in a small, messy garage, trying to make the internet useful. By 1997, Amazon was growing fast, so fast that it went public. The company's IPO, initial public offering, launched on May 15, 1997, with shares priced at $18 each. At that time, Amazon was still mainly a bookstore, but Jeff's vision was much bigger. He told investors that Amazon would become the everything store. Many people laughed. "You can't sell everything online," they said. But by 1998 and 1999, Amazon had expanded to sell music, DVDs, electronics, toys, and more. Its logo, an arrow pointing from A to Z, symbolized exactly that, a place to find anything. As excitement about the internet grew, investors poured money into any company with .com in its name. Amazon's stock price shot up to unbelievable heights. Jeff was on magazine covers, called a genius, and celebrated as a pioneer of e-commerce. But no one knew what was coming. In March 2000, the dot-com bubble burst. Investors suddenly realized that many internet companies were losing money. Stock prices crashed overnight. Amazon stock, once worth more than $100 per share, fell to less than $6. The company's value dropped by more than 90%. Analysts predicted Amazon wouldn't survive the year. Headlines called it Amazon.bomb. But Jeff Bezos, however, stayed calm. When reporters asked how he felt about losing billions in market value, he simply said, "The stock is not the company. The company is what we're building."
Inside Amazon, things were tense. The company had to cut costs, lay off employees, and slow down expansion. Many other .com companies, like Pets.com, Webvan, and eToys, completely disappeared. Jeff knew the only way to survive was to focus on customers and be frugal. He pushed teams to make operations more efficient, faster shipping, better warehouses, and smarter software. He also refused to panic. Instead, he saw the crisis as a test. In every crisis, there's an opportunity, if you're willing to think long-term. During the downturn, Amazon doubled down on two key ideas. Customer trust. Amazon built strong customer reviews, better delivery systems, and a solid return policy. People kept shopping because they trusted the brand. Innovation. Even during the crash, Bezos launched new services like Marketplace, which allowed third-party sellers to list products. This idea later became one of Amazon's biggest strengths. By 2002, Amazon was still standing. Smaller, leaner, but alive. That same year, it reported its first ever profit, a modest $5 million in the last quarter. For Jeff, that profit meant more than money. It proved that his vision could survive reality.
The dot-com crash taught Jeff and Amazon a simple truth. You can't control the market, but you can control your company. While others vanished, Amazon survived because it cared about customers more than investors. It stayed focused, learned to be efficient, and kept innovating even when things looked hopeless. This period shaped Amazon's DNA: resilient, patient, and customer-obsessed. After surviving the dot-com crash, Amazon began rebuilding. By the early 2000s, things started to turn around. Jeff and his team were no longer just trying to survive, they were planning how to dominate. Bezos was obsessed with long-term growth. He believed that if you made customers happy, everything else, profits, loyalty, market share, would follow naturally. That idea became Amazon's secret engine. He described it using a simple image: a flywheel.
A flywheel is a heavy wheel that takes effort to start spinning, but once it's moving, it builds momentum and becomes unstoppable. Jeff used this idea as a metaphor for Amazon's growth. Here's how it worked. Lower prices attract more customers. More customers bring more sellers to the platform. More sellers lead to greater product selection. More selection improves the customer experience. Better experience drives more traffic. More traffic increases sales volume, which allows lower prices again. Each turn made the wheel spin faster. That cycle, simple but powerful, became Amazon's business model for decades. In 2005, Bezos introduced Amazon Prime, a membership that offered free 2-day shipping for an annual fee. Many investors thought he was crazy. "You'll lose money on shipping," they said. But Jeff saw it differently. Prime wasn't about short-term profit, it was about loyalty. Once customers joined Prime, they ordered more often. They became hooked on the speed, convenience, and trust. Over time, Prime became a lifestyle. One-click shopping, streaming, reading, and even groceries. By 2025, Prime had grown into one of the largest subscription programs in the world, with hundreds of millions of members.
In 2007, Amazon launched the Kindle, a sleek e-reader that let users download and read books instantly. The idea came directly from Jeff's passion for books and technology. He wanted to make every book ever written available within 60 seconds. The Kindle made that dream real. At first, publishers were skeptical, but readers loved it. Within months, Amazon sold out of every Kindle they produced. Soon, to buy a book no longer meant walking into a store. It meant clicking a button. The Kindle also created a new ecosystem for self-publishing, giving unknown authors a voice. It was another example of Bezos's focus on empowering customers and creators alike. Behind the scenes, Amazon was also developing Amazon Web Services, AWS, a cloud computing division that started as an internal project. We'll explore AWS fully in the next chapter. By 2009, Amazon had grown far beyond books. It sold electronics, clothing, furniture, and nearly anything imaginable. But Jeff still ran the company like a startup, focusing on experimentation, efficiency, and invention. He famously said, quote, "It's always day one," unquote. That meant stay hungry, stay curious, and never act like the company is done growing.
By combining Prime's loyalty, Kindle's innovation, and the flywheel model, Bezos created a business that fed on its own success. The more people joined Amazon, the stronger it became. Other companies tried to copy the model, but they couldn't match Amazon's relentless focus on customers. Jeff's approach turned Amazon from a struggling online bookstore into a global ecosystem, one that connected buyers, sellers, creators, and technology under a single mission: to be Earth's most customer-centric company. In the early 2000s, Amazon had already become a massive e-commerce platform. Millions of customers were shopping every day, and thousands of developers were building new features. But inside the company, teams were struggling. Every time they launched a new service, whether it was for books, music, or electronics, engineers had to rebuild the same infrastructure: databases, servers, and storage. It was slow, expensive, and inefficient. Jeff noticed this pattern. If Amazon's internal teams needed fast, reliable computing power on demand, then maybe other businesses did too. This simple observation led to a big idea. What if Amazon provided computing as a service, just like electricity? That meant companies could rent technology instead of buying it, a radical shift from owning servers to using the cloud.
In 2002, Amazon quietly began offering some internal tools to outside developers. Then, in 2006, it officially launched Amazon Web Services, AWS, starting with two main products: Amazon S3, or Simple Storage Service, for storing data online, and Amazon EC2, or Elastic Compute Cloud, for renting computing power. These services let startups and companies run websites, apps, and databases without owning any physical hardware. They could scale up or down instantly and only pay for what they used. It was revolutionary. At first, few people outside the tech world noticed. Amazon was still seen as a retailer, not a tech giant. But soon, companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and Dropbox began building their entire systems on AWS. By 2010, AWS had become the invisible backbone of the Internet. It powered apps, websites, and companies in every industry, from entertainment to healthcare. Jeff often said that AWS was proof of how long-term thinking pays off. It wasn't glamorous, but it solved real problems. And once the world caught on, it became unstoppable.
In just a few years, AWS turned into a profit machine. While Amazon's retail business often ran on thin margins, AWS generated enormous income. By 2015, AWS brought in more than $7 billion in revenue and accounted for more than half of Amazon's total profits. Today, it's a $1 trillion business on its own. This shift changed how investors saw Amazon. It wasn't just a store anymore, it was a technology infrastructure company. Jeff Bezos rarely bragged about AWS. In fact, for years, Amazon didn't even promote it heavily. But inside the company, Bezos treated AWS as a model of innovation. It came from solving Amazon's own problems. It helped other businesses grow, and it showed the power of thinking beyond your core market. He once said, "Big things start small." That simple phrase described AWS perfectly, a small internal project that grew into the world's largest cloud platform. AWS taught Amazon a few lasting lessons. Internal pain can lead to external opportunity. Infrastructure matters more than people think. The future belongs to those who build quietly and think long-term. Jeff's decision to launch AWS showed that innovation doesn't always mean new gadgets or flashy products. Sometimes it means creating the tools that let others build the future. From the very beginning, Jeff Bezos knew that culture mattered. He didn't want Amazon to become slow, political, or bloated like many big companies. So he designed its culture with intentional simplicity and relentless focus. Amazon's early office furniture, desks made from wooden doors, became a symbol of that mindset. When Jeff founded the company in his garage, he couldn't afford fancy furniture. So he bought cheap doors from Home Depot, attached legs to them, and made work tables. Even as Amazon became a billion-dollar company, those door desks stayed. They reminded everyone that saving money for customers was more important than spending it on comfort. It became part of Amazon's DNA, frugality. Bezos once said, "Frugality drives innovation. One of the only ways to get out of a tight box is to invent your way out."
Another famous part of Amazon's culture was the two-pizza team rule. Jeff believed that every team should be small enough to be fed by 2 pizzas. Why? Because small teams move faster. They communicate better. They don't waste time in endless meetings. In Bezos's view, if a project required a team bigger than that, it was probably too complicated or poorly designed. 2 pizza teams were empowered to build, test, and launch independently, like mini startups inside Amazon. This system encouraged innovation. Some of Amazon's biggest products, like Prime and Alexa, started as small, focused teams with a clear mission. While most companies talked about beating rivals, Bezos told his teams to ignore competitors and obsess over customers instead. He explained it this way: if we focus on our competitors, we have to wait for them to act. If we focus on our customers, we can lead. That principle guided every decision, from designing the website layout to deciding shipping times. Amazon didn't just want satisfied customers, it wanted delighted ones. At Amazon, Jeff banned PowerPoint presentations. He believed slides encouraged lazy thinking. Instead, he required everyone to write detailed 6-page memos for important meetings. Each meeting began with 20 to 30 minutes of silent reading where everyone read the memo in full. Then discussion followed. This forced clarity. If you couldn't explain an idea in clear writing, you probably didn't understand it well enough. Bezos called this the narrative structure, a way to make sure ideas were deeply thought out, not just summarized in bullet points.
As Amazon grew, Jeff codified its culture into a list of leadership principles, guiding values that every employee, from intern to executive, was expected to live by. Some of the most famous include customer obsession, start with the customer and work backward, bias for action, speed matters, invent and simplify, innovation is everyone's job, frugality, do more with less,
Ownership. Think like an owner, not an employee. These principles weren't just posters on walls. They were used in performance reviews, interviews, and daily decisions. Amazon's culture was not soft or comfortable. It was intense, data-driven, and unforgiving. Many employees found it challenging, but for those who thrived, it was exhilarating. Jeff wanted Amazon to stay like a day-one company, always curious, never satisfied. In his famous shareholder letter, he wrote, "Day 2 is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating decline, followed by death. And that is why it is always day 1. For Bezos, day 1 meant the startup spirit, bold ideas, quick action, and obsession with customers above everything. This mix of frugality, small teams, writing discipline, and customer obsession created something rare, a company that could scale to global size, yet still think like a startup. It wasn't luck, it was culture by design.
By the early 2010s, traditional newspapers were in deep trouble. Advertising had moved online, and print sales were collapsing. The Washington Post, once one of the most powerful voices in American media, was losing money year after year. It had a great legacy, famous for uncovering the Watergate scandal in the 1970s, but in the digital age, it was falling behind. The Post's longtime owner, Catherine Weymouth, granddaughter of legendary publisher Katharine Graham, realized that the newspaper needed new ideas, not just new headlines. That's when she turned to Jeff Bezos. In August 2013, Jeff Bezos personally bought the Washington Post for $250 million, not through Amazon, but with his own money. This detail was important. Bezos didn't want the newspaper tied to Amazon's business interests. He promised the staff 3 things: editorial independence, the newsroom would stay free to report whatever it wanted, even if it criticized Amazon; long-term thinking, he wouldn't demand quick profits; and innovation. He would bring tech culture to the newsroom. To many, it seemed crazy. Newspapers were dying. But Jeff saw something different, a digital opportunity.
Bezos believed that journalism could be saved, not by nostalgia, but by technology. He encouraged the Post to think like a startup again, experiment, use data, and reach global audiences online. He funded new teams for website redesigns and faster mobile apps, analytics tools to track reader engagement, a digital subscription model focusing on online readers, not paper delivery. He also invested in cloud computing and personalization tools, helping the Post run more efficiently and recommend stories based on reader interests. Within a few years, these changes transformed the Washington Post from a local paper into a global digital news leader. By 2016, the Post became profitable again, something that had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Online readership soared into the tens of millions. Bezos' influence wasn't loud or controlling. He rarely interfered in editorial choices. Instead, he guided strategy, helping editors think in terms of scale, technology, and user experience, just like Amazon did with customers. One editor said, "Jeff doesn't tell us what to write. He asks us what data we have to support our ideas." That single mindset shift, data-driven journalism, helped the paper evolve for the 21st century.
Buying the Washington Post wasn't just a business move, it was also a statement about the role of truth in a digital world. Bezos believed that good journalism mattered, and that it could survive if run with the same discipline and innovation as a tech company. In an era of fake news and social media noise, the Post's new motto, "Democracy dies in darkness," captured the mission perfectly. Jeff's ownership of the Washington Post showed the same principles he used at Amazon. Think long-term, not short-term. Invest in systems, not quick fixes.
Trust talented people, but push them to innovate. And once again, he proved that technology, when guided by purpose, could revive even the oldest institutions. When Jeff was a teenager in Miami, he told his high school valedictorian audience that he wanted to build space colonies for millions of people. Most thought he was joking, but he wasn't. Even as he built Amazon, Jeff never forgot that dream. He once said, "I have been passionate about space since I was 5 years old. I want to help create a future where millions of people can live and work in space." While Amazon was about commerce, Blue Origin was about humanity's destiny.
In 2000, Jeff quietly founded Blue Origin, 5 years after starting Amazon. He didn't announce it publicly. For years, it operated in near secrecy on a remote ranch in West Texas. The company's Latin motto was Gradatum Ferociously, which means step by step, ferociously. That phrase perfectly described Bezos's philosophy: slow progress, but unstoppable determination. Blue Origin's mission wasn't just to launch rockets, it was to lower the cost of space travel, make rockets reusable, and eventually build a future where people could live beyond Earth. For years, Blue Origin tested small vehicles, vertical takeoff and landing rockets. Its first major prototype, New Shepard, was named after Alan Shepard, the first American astronaut in space. In 2015, New Shepard made history. It flew into space and then landed safely back on Earth, upright, ready to be used again. This was a major breakthrough. Until then, rockets were destroyed after every flight. Reusability was the key. As Jeff explained, you can't have a civilization in space if you throw away your rocket every time you fly. The idea was similar to how airplanes revolutionized travel, not by flying once, but by being used over and over. Around the same time, another visionary, Elon Musk, was building SpaceX. The media loved to compare the two billionaires, calling it the space race of the rich. But Jeff often said Blue Origin wasn't racing anyone. His focus was long-term progress, not speed. While SpaceX focused on satellites and Mars, Blue Origin aimed at building infrastructure, the roads, tools, and rockets that would enable others to go to space. In his words, "We're building the heavy-lifting infrastructure. Then the next generation can do amazing things on top of it."
Blue Origin gradually achieved several big milestones. 2015, first successful vertical landing of New Shepard. 2019, 12 successful test flights without crew. 2021, first crewed flight, carrying Jeff Bezos himself, his brother Mark, aviation pioneer Wally Funk, and 18-year-old Oliver Damon. That 2021 flight was short, just 10 minutes, but symbolic. Bezos, once a boy who dreamed of space colonies, had finally gone to space himself. After landing, he said emotionally, "Best day ever." Blue Origin's next rocket, New Glenn, named after astronaut John Glenn, is designed for orbital missions. Larger, reusable, and powerful enough to deliver satellites and cargo. Jeff's long-term vision for Blue Origin is not just tourism or business. He imagines millions of people living and working in space, with Earth preserved as a beautiful home planet. He often says, "Earth is the best planet in the solar system, so we must protect it. Space is where we'll move heavy industry so that Earth can stay clean and green." Blue Origin represents a different side of Jeff Bezos, not the businessman, but the dreamer. It shows his belief in persistence, patience, and vision.
He's investing billions into something that may not fully pay off in his lifetime, but could shape humanity's next chapter. In the same spirit as Amazon, he builds step by step, ferociously, trusting that steady progress, not hype, leads to true breakthroughs.
By the late 2010s, Amazon had grown into a global empire. Millions of products, hundreds of warehouses, and over 1 million employees. Its influence reached every corner of business: retail, cloud computing, entertainment, and even groceries after the Whole Foods acquisition in 2017. But with great power came great scrutiny. Governments, journalists, and workers began to ask, is Amazon too powerful? Does it treat its workers fairly? Does it crush small businesses and competitors? These questions began to shape the public image of both Amazon and Jeff Bezos. One of Amazon's biggest controversies centered on warehouse working conditions. Reports described long hours, tight schedules, and workers being monitored for productivity through scanners and performance metrics. In some fulfillment centers, employees claimed they were under constant pressure to meet high targets, with limited breaks and stressful shifts. Amazon defended itself, saying that most employees earned above-average pay and benefits, and that safety was improving every year. Still, stories spread fast. Protests, strikes, and social media campaigns called out Amazon's work culture, especially during the pandemic years when warehouse staff became essential workers, delivering goods to millions stuck at home. Bezos publicly thanked them, writing in his 2020 shareholder letter, "We are deeply grateful to our frontline employees for their extraordinary dedication." But many felt words weren't enough, and Amazon's labor practices became a hot political issue. As Amazon grew, regulators in the United States, Europe, and India began investigating its market power. Critics argued that Amazon used its size to pressure suppliers, collected data from small sellers, then used that data to compete against them, created unfair barriers to entry for smaller online businesses. Jeff Bezos was even called to testify before the U.S. Congress in 2020, alongside other tech CEOs like Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, and Sundar Pichai, Google. Lawmakers questioned him about whether Amazon was becoming a monopoly, too big to compete with. Bezos replied calmly, "Amazon's success comes from focusing on customers, not competitors." He insisted Amazon's marketplace actually helped small businesses by giving them access to global buyers. But not everyone agreed. By now, Bezos had become not just a businessman, but a public figure, and sometimes a target. His enormous wealth, he was for a time the richest man in the world, made him a symbol of economic inequality. Critics accused him of paying too little in taxes or of using his wealth for space travel instead of social causes. Others defended him, pointing out that Amazon created millions of jobs and made global trade easier for small sellers. Bezos often avoided public arguments. He focused instead on his guiding principle: work hard, have fun, make history. These years tested Bezos personally. He faced pressure from governments, unions, and the media, all while managing Amazon's explosive growth. In his letters to shareholders, he often spoke about how success can make a company slow and careless. He warned employees, "Staying in day one mode requires you to experiment patiently, accept failures, and always focus on customers." It was a reminder that Amazon's biggest enemy wasn't outside. It was complacency inside. These struggles taught Bezos a new kind of leadership, one that required humility, patience, and listening. From the outside, it looked like a battle between profit and principle. But for Bezos, it was about balance, building a company that could be both powerful and responsible.
Whether people admired him or criticized him, one thing was clear. Jeff Bezos had changed the way the world buys, sells, and even thinks about business. And as the storm swirled around Amazon, he began quietly planning his next move, a future beyond the CEO chair. In 1993, Jeff married Mackenzie Scott, a talented novelist and Princeton graduate whom he met while working at D.E. Shaw & Company in New York. Jeff was her boss at the time. She worked as a research associate. They connected quickly, sharing ambition, curiosity, and a taste for risk. Mackenzie supported Jeff's dream from the very beginning. When he decided to leave his stable Wall Street job to start Amazon, she didn't hesitate. She drove with him across the country to Seattle in 1994, helping him write the original Amazon business plan during the trip. She became one of Amazon's first employees, handling accounting, operations, and even early hiring. For years, they worked side by side. The couple had 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter adopted from China, and managed to stay mostly out of the spotlight, living a relatively private family life in Seattle.
As Amazon grew into a global empire, Jeff's life became far more public. Cameras followed him everywhere, and his face began appearing on magazine covers. Yet for many years, Jeff and Mackenzie remained low profile. That changed in 2019 when the couple announced their divorce after 25 years of marriage. It shocked the world. Together, they had built not only a company, but a life intertwined with history. Their separation was handled with rare dignity and respect. In a joint statement, they wrote that they would remain cherished friends and partners in raising their children. Mackenzie received 25% of their Amazon stock, worth around $38 billion at the time, making her one of the richest women in the world. But she soon became known not for her wealth, but for her generosity. After the divorce, Mackenzie Scott dedicated herself to philanthropy. Through her foundation and direct giving, she has donated tens of billions of dollars to schools, charities, and nonprofits worldwide, often without conditions or publicity. Jeff publicly praised her generosity, saying he was proud of her and inspired by her work. Their separation marked a personal turning point for him as well. Around the same time, he began to appear more publicly with Lauren Sanchez, a television host, pilot, and entrepreneur. For Jeff, the 2019 to 2021 period was about reflection and reinvention. He had achieved nearly everything in business. Amazon was one of the most valuable companies on earth. Yet he began to focus more on his legacy and the future beyond Amazon. He spent more time on Blue Origin, his space company, and on The Washington Post, his media venture. He also became more visible in public life, attending events, giving speeches, and even flying to space himself in 2021. His physical appearance changed too. The once quiet tech geek now appeared more confident, muscular, and open, a man who had weathered storms and was ready for a new phase of life. Despite fame and criticism, Jeff has often spoken about how much he values his family. In interviews, he described his parents, Jacqueline and Miguel Mike Bezos, as his biggest inspirations. Mike, who adopted Jeff as a child, taught him hard work and discipline. Jacqueline taught him resilience. Jeff once said, "Everything I've ever done started with my parents' support and belief in me." He remains close to them, and they often appeared together at Amazon events or space launches. Success brought challenges, intense public scrutiny, endless travel, and the pressure of being the world's richest man. Yet through it all, Bezos kept his private circle small and focused on what he called the long-term good. In his later interviews, he often emphasized kindness and perspective over competition, saying, "I'd rather be known as a good father and a good friend than a good businessman."
Jeff Bezos' personal story reminds us that even the most powerful people face loss, love, and change. His divorce, his family, and his rediscovery of purpose beyond money show a man who evolved from a driven founder to a reflective human being. He once summed it up simply, "We're all stories in the end. Try to make yours a good one." In July 1994, Jeff Bezos had typed the Amazon business plan in the passenger seat of a Chevy Blazer. By 2021, that small dream had turned into a $1.7 trillion company with over 1 million employees, operations across the globe, and dominance in industries from retail to cloud computing to entertainment. He had done what few ever could, not just built a company, but reshaped how humanity shops, reads, and works. Yet Bezos always said Amazon should stay in day one mode, the startup mindset of curiosity, urgency, and risk-taking. He warned that day two meant decline and death. By 2021, he realized something. For Amazon to stay day one, he had to step aside and let new energy lead. On February 2, 2021, Jeff Bezos made a historic announcement. He would step down as CEO of Amazon later that year. In a letter to employees, he wrote, "Being the CEO of Amazon is a deep responsibility, and it's consuming. When you have a responsibility like that, it's hard to put attention on anything else. As executive chair, I intend to focus my energies and attention on new products and early initiatives." The news shocked the business world, but Bezos explained his decision clearly. He wasn't leaving Amazon, he was just moving to a different seat. Bezos chose Andy Jassy as his successor, a longtime Amazon veteran who had joined the company in 1997 and built Amazon Web Services, AWS, from scratch. Andy was known for his precision, discipline, and customer focus, traits Bezos deeply valued. Many saw him as a Bezos-style leader, calm under pressure, data-driven, and quietly ambitious. Bezos trusted that Jassy would preserve Amazon's culture while steering it through its next stage of innovation. On July 5, 2021, exactly 27 years after Amazon's founding, Bezos officially handed over the CEO role. The date wasn't random, it was symbolic. July 5, 1994 had been Amazon's original founding day. Stepping down didn't mean slowing down. As executive chair of the board, Bezos continued to shape Amazon's vision, especially in areas like AI, logistics, and sustainability. But he also finally had time for other passions. Blue Origin, his space company. The Washington Post, his media venture. The Bezos Earth Fund, a $10 billion climate initiative to fight global warming.
Just days after stepping down, on July 20, 2021, Jeff Bezos made headlines again. This time, not for business, but for history. He boarded Blue Origin's New Shepard rocket, launched from West Texas, and traveled to the edge of space. The flight lasted just over 10 minutes, but it symbolized a lifetime dream fulfilled, from childhood fantasies of space colonies to actually looking down at Earth from above. After landing safely, Bezos smiled and said simply, "Best day ever." It was more than a joyride. It marked the beginning of his post-Amazon life, focused on space exploration and human advancement. As executive chair, Bezos continued to guide Amazon's big bets, but he no longer managed daily operations. This shift allowed him to think about legacy, not just profit. He spent more time mentoring leaders, reviewing long-term projects, and writing his annual shareholder letters with the same sharp insight and optimism. His 2021 letter ended with a reflection that captured his vision perfectly. "We are all part of the same planet. It's up to us to make sure it remains beautiful for our grandchildren." For Jeff Bezos, stepping down wasn't the end, it was evolution. After years of relentless work, he transitioned from builder to guardian, from operator to visionary. He didn't retire to rest, he simply shifted focus from one frontier, Earth, to another, space. In his own words, "I'm still having fun and I'm still inventing." In early 2020, when the world went into lockdown, people stopped shopping in stores but started ordering everything online. Within weeks, Amazon's orders skyrocketed. People needed food, cleaning supplies, medicine, electronics for work-from-home setups, and Amazon became the lifeline of modern living. But with that boom came chaos. Warehouses were overwhelmed, shipping was delayed, workers feared getting sick. Bezos called it the hardest time we've ever faced. Jeff made quick moves. Amazon spent billions on safety measures, installed temperature checks and cleaning stations, gave extra pay and paid time off for sick employees, hired over 400,000 new workers to handle the surge. Still, the company faced sharp criticism. Some workers said safety rules weren't enough, and protests broke out at warehouses in the US and Europe. Jeff responded publicly in his 2020 shareholder letter, saying, "We're not thinking small. We're using our scale for good to protect employees, customers, and communities." But the media remained divided. Some saw him as a savior of e-commerce, others as a symbol of corporate imbalance during crisis. During the pandemic, Amazon's supply chain was pushed beyond anything it had seen. Deliveries slowed down, and even Amazon Prime, once famous for two-day shipping, faced delays. Bezos ordered massive logistics expansions, more delivery trucks and planes, temporary storage facilities, prioritization of essential goods like food, baby products, and masks. It was like wartime logistics, 24/7 operations across continents. Through it all, Jeff's leadership style showed two traits that defined him: decisiveness and data. Every major move, from hiring surges to price freezes, came from data-driven analysis.
While millions lost jobs globally, Amazon's revenue soared. In 2020 alone, it earned $386 billion, with profits doubling compared to the year before. That success created another challenge: public perception. Critics said Amazon was profiting from a crisis. Others praised it for keeping society supplied when physical stores were closed. Jeff acknowledged the mixed feelings, saying, "This isn't business as usual, and it's a time of great stress and uncertainty. It's also a moment in history when we must rise together." He pledged $100 million in food relief through Feeding America and launched funds to support small businesses and delivery partners. The non-stop crisis management took a toll. By mid-2021, Bezos decided to step down as CEO, handing leadership to Andy Jassy. The pandemic, in many ways, became his final full-scale test as Amazon's commander. It was the moment he proved Amazon could endure any storm, but also the point where he realized he wanted to explore bigger missions beyond business. The COVID era revealed the dual face of Jeff Bezos: the strategist who kept one of the world's largest systems running during chaos, and the human, forced to confront criticism, responsibility, and moral complexity. It taught him, and Amazon, that success is never just about money or speed. It's about trust, empathy, and doing the right thing even when the world is watching. Jeff Bezos had always believed that speed was the ultimate competitive advantage. From the early two-day shipping promise of Prime, he pushed Amazon toward a single, ambitious goal: get products to customers as fast as possible, maybe even before they think to order them. Under his leadership, Amazon invested billions of dollars to expand its logistics empire. A global network of fulfillment centers, sorting hubs, and delivery stations. Its own airline fleet, called Amazon Air, with over 80 cargo planes. A fleet of delivery vans, branded with the Amazon Smile, operated by small local partners. Experiments with Prime Air drones, capable of delivering small packages in under 30 minutes. Bezos often said,
We're not in the shipping business. We're in the business of making customers' lives easier. That philosophy turned Amazon from an online store into a full-scale logistics company, one that could rival UPS, FedEx, and even national postal systems. While the world saw warehouses and delivery trucks, the real magic of Amazon's system came from AI, or artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Amazon used AI everywhere. To predict what products people would want next, to recommend items in real time, to manage inventory so efficiently that most packages came from the nearest possible warehouse, to train Alexa, the voice assistant that powered millions of Echo smart devices worldwide. Bezos viewed AI not as a gadget, but as a utility, something as essential as electricity. It powered everything from search results to warehouse robots. He once explained, "Machine learning is not futuristic, it's right now. It's helping us make better decisions thousands of times per second." Amazon also opened its AI tools to the public through AWS, allowing companies, startups, and even governments to build their own intelligent systems.
In 2012, Amazon made a quiet but groundbreaking move. It acquired Kiva Systems, a robotics company. The small orange robots built by Kiva transformed how warehouses operated. Instead of humans walking miles through aisles to pick products, the robots brought the shelves to the workers. This simple idea boosted speed, reduced costs, and helped Amazon scale its operations globally. By the 2020s, Amazon had hundreds of thousands of robots working alongside humans. Bezos described this collaboration as the future of work, not man versus machine, but man with machine. He said, "The best way to think about automation is not replacing people, it's empowering them to do more." Still, the rapid automation raised new debates about jobs, efficiency, and the future of human labor, topics Jeff approached with both optimism and caution. Even after stepping down as CEO, Bezos continued to push Amazon's new frontiers, sustainability. He launched the Climate Pledge, committing Amazon to reach net zero carbon emissions by 2040, a full decade ahead of the Paris Agreement. Healthcare. Amazon entered the healthcare space through projects like Amazon Pharmacy and the acquisition of One Medical. Entertainment. Through Amazon Studios and the purchase of MGM, Bezos strengthened Amazon's role in streaming and digital storytelling. AI revolution. Amazon invested heavily in AI models and cloud-based intelligence through AWS, preparing for a future where smart systems would be as common as smartphones. Even in his new role, Bezos kept repeating his favorite advice. If you only do things that you know will work, you leave a lot of opportunity on the table. He encouraged Amazon leaders to take big swings, risky, experimental projects that might fail but could change the world if they succeeded. This mindset produced innovations like Amazon Go, cashierless stores, and Project Cooper, a plan to launch satellites to deliver internet globally, competing with SpaceX's Starlink. To Jeff, these weren't side projects. They were investments in humanity's future. Through all the innovation, Bezos's philosophy remained steady. Start with the customer, move fast but think long, be stubborn on vision, flexible on details. Whether it was a warehouse robot, an AI engine, or a space rocket, every project reflected the same mindset that began in a garage: experiment boldly, learn quickly, and never settle. For years, Bezos avoided the topic of money. He was known for driving an old Honda Accord even after Amazon became a global success. But by 2018, Amazon's growth had made him wealthier than anyone alive. When his net worth crossed $150 billion, he was asked how it felt. His reply was short: "It's a lot of responsibility." He understood that his wealth wasn't just personal.
It represented the success of millions of Amazon employees, sellers, and customers. Still, with that immense fortune came pressure. The public expected him to give back, just as other billionaires like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett had pledged to do. In his early years, Bezos' charitable giving was modest compared to his business investments. He donated quietly to causes like education, homelessness, and medical research, but avoided grand announcements. In 2012, he and his family gave $2.5 million to support same-sex marriage rights in Washington state. It was one of his first major public gifts and a sign of his willingness to act on personal values. He once said, "Charity is great, but the way I contribute most is through innovation, by building businesses that improve lives."
In 2018, Bezos launched the Bezos Day One Fund, pledging $2 billion to help homeless families and create preschools in low-income communities. He explained that Day One referred to the same philosophy that guided Amazon, staying fresh, bold, and compassionate. The fund focused on immediate action, not bureaucracy, aiming to directly help people in need. He wrote, "We will build an organization that operates with the same principles as Amazon: intense customer, or in this case, human obsession." The fund has since supported hundreds of nonprofits across the U.S., providing housing, education, and emergency relief. As he spent more time on Blue Origin and reflected on the fragility of Earth from space, Bezos became deeply concerned about climate change. In 2020, he announced the Bezos Earth Fund, a $10 billion commitment to fight global warming. It became one of the largest environmental pledges in history. He said, "Earth is the only good planet in the solar system. Let's protect it." The fund supports projects on clean energy, reforestation, climate policy, and carbon capture technologies. Bezos also joined global initiatives to preserve nature and reduce industrial pollution. Bezos believes that philanthropy should be thoughtful, strategic, and scalable. He often contrasts it with innovation, saying both must aim for long-term impact. He's been asked if he plans to give away most of his wealth in his lifetime, as Bill Gates did. In 2022, he finally confirmed that he would. "Yes, I plan to give away the majority of my wealth to fighting climate change and supporting people who can unite humanity." This marked a turning point in his public image, from business titan to future philanthropist. Bezos' giving has also focused on people who make a difference. He created the Bezos Courage and Civility Award, granting $100 million each to individuals who find solutions with kindness. Recipients have included Jose Andres, who feeds disaster-hit communities, and Dolly Parton, known for her education and health charity work. It reflected his belief that lasting change comes from empowering leaders with vision and compassion, not just institutions. Bezos' legacy is still being written. Some see him as a symbol of capitalism, others as a visionary shaping the future of humanity. But he sees himself as a builder, someone who wants to use his fortune and influence to expand what's possible. He once summarized his mission in one powerful line: "Our civilization needs builders. If I can help create more of them, that will be my greatest legacy." From Amazon to Blue Origin, from the Earth Fund to education, Bezos' story is no longer just about business. It's about stewardship, protecting the planet, empowering people, and preparing for the generations that will come after us.
Jeff Bezos' story began in a garage in Seattle, with desks made of wooden doors and a dream to sell books online. It ends, or rather continues, with rockets lifting off into space. That journey wasn't magic. It was built on persistence, vision, and discipline. Jeff's path shows that success doesn't come from luck or shortcuts, but from years of hard work, countless failures, and never losing sight of the bigger picture. From those early days of shipping books by hand, Bezos built Amazon into one of the most powerful organizations in human history. A company that changed how the world buys, sells, reads, and connects. Bezos's greatest strength has always been long-term thinking. While others chased quarterly profits, he looked decades ahead. He called this the long view, the belief that patience, innovation, and customer trust would pay off in the end. He once wrote to shareholders, "If everything you do needs to work in 3 years, you're competing against a lot of people. But if you're willing to invest for 7 to 10 years, you're competing against very few." That mindset built Amazon, fueled AWS, and made Blue Origin possible. It reminds us that the biggest results often come from the smallest steps, repeated with faith and purpose. While most companies focus on beating rivals, Bezos focused on serving customers. He repeated it so often it became Amazon's heartbeat. Start with the customer and work backward. That simple idea, caring about what people need more than what competitors are doing, changed global business culture. It showed that genuine service, not marketing tricks, earns loyalty and trust. For all his success, Jeff faced many failures. Projects that collapsed, ideas that flopped, and public criticism that stung. Amazon's Fire Phone was a disaster. Early expansions into groceries, travel, and auctions didn't work. But Bezos didn't hide these mistakes. He celebrated them. He said, "Failure and invention are inseparable twins. To invent, you have to experiment. And if you know the outcome in advance, it's not an experiment." He built a culture where failure wasn't punished, it was expected. That courage to fail became Amazon's greatest engine of invention. Throughout his career, Jeff followed a few simple principles: clarity, logic, and discipline. Whether it was banning PowerPoint in favor of written memos or insisting on small 2-pizza teams, he made complex problems easier by focusing on fundamentals. He believed that simplicity was power, and that the best ideas are often the clearest ones.
Bezos' story isn't only about technology. It's about human ambition, the desire to go further, do better, and explore beyond limits. Through Blue Origin, he hopes to make space travel routine and safe, so that one day, millions can live and work beyond Earth. Through the Bezos Earth Fund, he hopes to protect the planet he loves. Through the Washington Post, he supports truth and democracy. Each effort reflects a single purpose: to create a sustainable, intelligent, and expanding future for humankind. Jeff Bezos is far from perfect. He's been criticized for wealth inequality, corporate control, and the pressure of Amazon's work culture. But his story is also about evolution. How a person can grow from an ambitious founder into a thoughtful leader who understands the deeper impact of his power. He once said in an interview, "When you're 80, you won't regret the things you did. You'll regret the things you didn't do." That quote sums up his entire life, a man who refused to live with regret. Jeff Bezos' journey teaches us 3 lasting lessons. Dream boldly. Even impossible ideas start small, in a garage, a notebook, or a conversation. Think long-term. Build for the future, not for applause. Act with persistence. Keep turning the flywheel one push at a time until it spins on its own. He may have built one of the largest companies on Earth, but his true legacy lies in how he thinks, with courage, curiosity, and conviction that the future belongs to builders. As he once said to his team, "We are still at day one. It's always day one." And for Jeff Bezos, and anyone who dares to dream big, day one never ends.